Dozens of people forced to live in their cars.
This is Perth's street of despair. Car after car parked up, home to those who have nowhere else to go.
How long have you been living here for, brother? 2 years?
2 years, wow.
Yeah, that'd be about right.
Can you imagine living in a tent because you can't afford a rental? That's a reality for Christine and her 4 kids.
Many Australians are now homeless due to the current cost of living crisis.
People are living in tents because they can't afford housing.
This isn't livable. You're not supposed to live this way.
It could be mistaken for a tourist hotspot, but this is far from paradise. Pensioners living in cars because they can no longer afford to rent.
This isn't okay.
We're actually going to label them the working homeless. These people have jobs, they just don't have accommodation.
This is happening in Australia right now. People are living in tents, not camping, not travelling, not by choice, because they have nowhere else to go. In a country known for its quality of life, more and more Australians are being pushed out of housing completely. Rent has skyrocketed, vacancy rates are near record lows, and finding a place to live has become a competition most people can't win. Families are being priced out, workers are being priced out, even people with stable jobs are being pushed to the edge. And when there are no affordable homes left, people don't just figure it out. They end up in cars, in temporary shelters, or in tents. What used to be unthinkable is slowly becoming normal. Entire communities of tents are forming in places where people used to rent, work, and live normal lives. And the most shocking part? These aren't people who failed. These are people who got priced out. This is what happens when housing becomes unaffordable and the cost of living keeps rising at the same time. This isn't just a housing issue anymore. This is a crisis.
I don't even know why there's any discussion about why this is acceptable for Australians to be living in these tents in the bush. Australia, we need to do better.
Where are we at with homelessness in this country?
We wrote to the major councils in southeast Queensland over 2 years ago, warning them of a new thing called tent cities. This is an unusual circumstance because we're actually going to label them the working homeless. These people have jobs, they just don't have accommodation. And so these aren't people who have chosen the wrong choices in their life. These are people that simply can't get real estate. We're seeing 122,000 people are deemed homeless at the moment in Australia. If you get to a point where in any society you don't create certainty, those people have got nothing to lose. They're just into self-survival mode. That's not cool. All they do is say, this is the green zone, so we're going to chuck your stuff in the bin and move you over there to the red zone. And if you come in the green zone, we're going to hunt you down again and keep pushing you out. We're not fixing it. We're just moving you.
This isn't okay. Now, I don't know if this is true. And we shouldn't have homeless people. Like, that's not cool. You should all have somewhere to go. But I thought it would have probably been young people. This is like my mum being homeless, and that's not cool. Who's helping these ladies? Because it feels like if this is true, the system's failing them, and it's hard. Like, you probably took time out of work for kids and all the rest of it. It's not a good environment.
You're definitely worried about safety, and you're worried about what's going to happen to you later on, or if you're even going to have food.
Madison dreams of becoming an animator, but her living situation is preventing her from attending school. This is her home. The Year 11 student says it's hard to study here.
Well, we have power and internet so that I can get the programs on my laptop, but it's also very difficult because with the Wi-Fi being how it is, it makes it really slow.
Her family of 4 moved out of their rental home when it went up for sale. They camped on a farm but were forced to leave by the local council. They now pay $360 a week for this site.
Because they work day shift, they're here by themselves. I'm constantly worried about them.
Madison's parents also worry about their daughter's education.
Like she's got these dreams that she wants to do, but she can't. She can only do a certain amount of it. She can't get full access of schooling.
A lot of people will have the assumption that because you're homeless, you're on drugs or you've got an alcohol addiction, but it's due to not being able to afford rental pricing.
It might come as a surprise to the local governments of southeast Queensland, but evicting people from public parks won't actually solve the housing crisis, and it won't get these people any closer to a home. And we've actually been here before. My research found 11 informal camps across Brisbane that sprung up in the post-World War II period, as people grappled with that housing shortage. At that time, families started squatting in abandoned military hospitals and barracks across the city, built by the Americans but left vacant after the war. Others started building makeshift encampments in places like Crib Island, where Brisbane's airport now sits, and bushland at Tarragindi and Moorooka, using old tarps, bush timber and flattened kerosene tins. At first, state government and councils threatened eviction, saying these places were unsuitable for housing. But what do you do when you have nowhere else to go? Eventually, authorities took a position of tolerance, realising the futility of eviction. In some instances, they even provided tents, potable water and toilets. What finally solved the post-war housing shortage? It was housing supply, but not by the market. It was public supply, a sustained investment in public housing construction, something we haven't seen since. If we are to truly resolve this housing shortage, we can't just tinker at the margins. Perhaps we need to go back to the old system that prioritised putting a roof over everybody's heads.
To the people out there, I think if there was anything available, house-wise, and if anyone can help, we would be absolutely grateful and appreciate anything. Yeah, these kids are alive.
We could solve homelessness in Australia, but we just don't want to. And I know that sounds provocative, but here's the reality of the situation. You have walked past someone on the sides of the street and done nothing. You've probably been on your way to get coffee, seen someone there, and looked away. Heck, you potentially have even walked over someone on your way to get into a store, maybe a 7-Eleven. And so have I. We have all done it. And I know the mind instantly goes to, whose fault is it? Is it their fault? Are they on drugs? Maybe it's their mental health problems. Or it's a system that's failed them. What are we meant to do? But while we are all sitting here, spending our time debating whose fault it is, the reality of the situation is they are still there, in the city, lying on the cold concrete floor, and still invisible. And that person, they did not choose this. They just ran out of road. It might look like a month of missing rent, perhaps a relationship that ends up being violent. Maybe you just had a job that didn't work out. Or even, if you want to put the blame there, a system that might have failed them so they ended up falling through the cracks. But the part that we need to focus on is that as soon as people arrive onto the streets, we stop seeing them as a person. Like, we can actually solve this. But what we all need to do is we need to start seeing them as a person and not a problem. It's not about being a hero. Like, we need to just all stop looking away.
Homelessness in Australia doesn't always start the way people imagine. It doesn't begin with nothing. It often starts with one change, a rent increase, a lease not being renewed, a sudden cost that can't be covered. And when rents are already high, there's no cheaper option to move into. People search for weeks, sometimes months, competing with dozens of others for the same property. And when they lose that competition, there's nowhere left to go. That's how people fall through the cracks, not because they stopped trying, but because the system ran out of space for them.
Many Australians are now homeless due to the current cost of living crisis. Watch this.
Good evening. The shocking reality of the fuel and cost of living crisis has been exposed, with pensioners among dozens of people forced to live in their cars.
This is Perth's street of despair. Car after car parked up, home to those who have nowhere else to go. It could be mistaken for a tourist hotspot, but this is far from paradise. Pensioners living in cars because they can no longer afford to rent.
Devastating. Absolutely devastating. Got to be careful where you spend your money.
Peter used to rent across the road, but a sharp rent increase forced the former tradie onto the street.
This is like being in a jail cell.
Parked up alongside a new generation of Australians facing homelessness. Mia used to be a disability support worker, helping others. Now she needs help herself. She's been living out the back of her car now for more than 9 months.
Mark Kent is 66, suffering from a condition he describes as losing his marbles.
The blood vessels are blocked in my brain and I'm probably on limited time, but yeah, just keep forgetting everything and there's no treatment for it. My mum died in a nursing home and I see what goes on, and when it's time to come I'll end it.
It is so sad to see. It's actually left me speechless. It's a tough watch. But that is the truth and the reality of what's currently going on in Australia right now. it blows my mind, but that's just pure mismanagement from the government in Australia. There's no care, there's no support, there's no help for any of these people, and no Australian should be left to feel this way. The truth of the matter is, there will be more people like this as time progresses because things aren't going to get better. That's the truth. But what blows my mind is that there are so many non-Australian immigrants that have better and more housing benefits than what your typical Australian does. Like, make that make sense.
People are living in tents because they can't afford housing in New South Wales. Families are living in tents.
Why are these huge queues around the corner of this block here? What's going on? You know, it's people lining up for rentals, you know?
We have a major housing affordability challenge, so there is a great distress in the market. 40 years ago, houses were under $100,000 then across all our capital cities, whereas today for Sydney it's over $1 million.
In the 80s and 90s, there's a kind of general turn away from the idea that the state should be providing for people's welfare needs.
We've had a perfect storm of tax regulation, to a point increased migration, massively increasing prices of housing over the past 20 years in Australia.
We do value, I think, a pretty lavish lifestyle here in Australia, and so we're spending money on things like the cafe culture. However, that hasn't been the cause of the housing crisis. I think the government at a federal and state level is holding responsibility.
Gold Coast has a massive homeless housing crisis.
It's revealed a bold plan to stamp out tent cities popping up across the Gold Coast.
Who'd have thought? Because if you're going to be homeless, you might as well be homeless somewhere nice.
Crisis remains an ongoing issue, with tent cities popping up around the Gold Coast.
Preferably near the beach. Preferably somewhere where there's a public toilet as well. I've heard that helps a lot when you're homeless.
Since last year, City Council's response has changed from a farewell-led to a compliance-led model, meaning rough sleepers are being forced to move on more quickly, unable to settle down in a spot for too long.
Why do we have a homeless crisis? Why do we have people sleeping rough in car parks?
Mayor Tom Tate says the city is working closely with police regarding any complaints, but believes it is a state government issue.
It wouldn't be anything to do with the amount of people we let into the country over the last, 3 years since COVID, and we opened the borders and pumped in millions of migrants. Tom Tate is the mayor of the Gold Coast. If you're not from the Goldie, love it how 3 levels of government, local, state and federal, all blame each other for this crisis. You've got 3 finger pointers all pointing at each other going, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. When the actual culprit here, the reason for your housing crisis, the reason for your homeless crisis is your federal government. Your federal government. Local council can't turn off the flow of migration, neither can the state government. Your feds, your Albanese government, they absolutely 100% hold the can for all of the problems in this country right now. Everything trickles down from incompetence.
You go to every single home open, you go to all of the places that are trying to rent their houses, you do the best you can to make a good impression and all that stuff. You put in applications on time, and I've been rejected every single time, and it's depressing because it makes you not want to even bother, but if you don't bother, you don't get a chance at all.
Can you imagine living in a tent because you can't afford a rental? That's a reality for Christine and her 4 kids.
This isn't livable. You're not supposed to live this way.
So you've got your bedroom, a kitchen, a dining room in here.
And closet for storage, I guess.
I feel like I'm just hitting the brick wall every single time. And then we come back here and we go to sleep. Wake up and do it all again the next day. So yeah, it's not fantastic.
When Christine's home burnt down in January, she was plunged back into a rental market economists describe as among the worst in the country. She's had over 50 housing applications rejected and jumps between different caravan parks. Caravan park owners have told me they're turning desperate families away daily because they just can't keep up with demand. Christine says she's on a priority waiting list for social housing, but says it could take years.
How long have you been living here for, brother? 2 years?
2 years, wow.
Yeah, that'd be about right. About right. Because I think this tent was one of the first ones up. Yeah, I'd seen that. I was telling the bro here that I used to run past here when I lived in South Mackay. So how many of you live down here, my man? Oh, okay.
Do you guys get hassled by council?
Oh, they put a skip in here for them, so I think. Oh, over there.
It's clear. Oh, so they're okay.
In,
Oh, yeah,
so
there's a
okay,
skip.
so we can-
There's like a skip there for rubbish and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, true. So they can let you guys stay here.
Yeah, out of sight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And true. This is the food trolley.
Oh,
We're just gonna scope around if that's okay, bro. Thank you.
brother, much
Appreciate it,
appreciated,
man.
mate.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
Man, this is crazy. Just to seeing this like in person is just like, man. Like I said to Nate, I watched this on TV on YouTube, man. So this is.
The housing crisis isn't just about demand, it's about affordability. Property prices have risen, rents have risen, but incomes haven't kept up at the same level. At the same time, housing supply hasn't met the growing need, and the result is pressure across the entire system. People who used to rent comfortably are now struggling. People who were already struggling are being pushed out completely, and when there's no safety net strong enough to catch them, they end up in situations that shouldn't exist in a country like Australia. This is how a housing crisis turns into a homelessness crisis.
Hi. Don't come on very often at the moment because I've been flat out with, family and whatnot. But I had to share something that I think needed to be shared. I have just come back from a major shopping centre near where I live. And I was just picking up some things to get ready for tax time for our business. And crossing the street, I saw this couple. I didn't sort of stare because I'm not a starer. God, I have trouble making eye contact, period, let alone staring at people. Anyway, I saw this couple and then I realised they had a trolley. And at first I thought they'd had shopping in it. And they had like this blanket, what I thought was some sort of blanket or something drooped over and some bags and things. And then I had another look at them and I was trying not to stare. But then I realised that it was an old doona and it was all dirty and they had their shopping bags. And then I saw the lady. She would have, both of them would have been my age, And, they were together and trying to get this trolley across the street and, they had their doonas and their doona and their pillows and everything in the world in this shopping trolley. And the lady, she still had her hair on these little plaits, even though you could tell her hair hadn't been washed in so long. And, the gentleman, had his hair neatly put back, but you could just see like they hadn't bathed or had a chance to refresh themselves in a very long time. And it made me just realise just how much this world is, is worrying. We're worrying about, the most ridiculous things. And there are so many people out there that are so less fortunate than us. I see people on the news and, on these news channels and on radio and everywhere else. I'm ex-radio, I used to be an announcer. And I see these people banging on about, the economy and this and that, yet they're earning such amazing figures, They're on good money and they're complaining. What about that poor couple? They have nothing. but themselves and that little trolley full of stuff. And we are sitting on our thrones complaining. We have roofs over our heads. We have cars we can drive, businesses we can run, you know. And if you don't have a business, you're earning good figures, you know. And so many people are complaining. Oh, look at me, poor me. I have been unemployed. I have been down to the bottom. You know, my parents were never rich. I remember the days my mum and I would hide behind the couch when the old gas man used to come to the door, and he would ring the doorbell and he'd want some payment for the gas. And my mum would never have the money. My dad would be off doing night shift or whatever he was doing, because Dad, God bless his socks, but he was never really around much. He was always fooling around, let's just say that. So it was just Mum and I, and we'd have to hide from the gas man because we didn't have the money, you know, or the electricity man, and the lights would go off and we'd be sitting in darkness until my grandmother could come along and save the day and pay the bills. So I've been there. You know, I was the kid at school that wore the clothes from Trash and Treasure. I was the kid that ate the most basic, you know, foods. And if I did take foods, it was generally food my grandmother had made, which was from a European background. And the other kids looked at me like, what the heck? But I didn't realise even then I was still lucky. I had a roof over my head. I may have been wearing Trash and Treasure clothes. I may have been eating basic foods or peasant foods, but at least I had it. And then I look at that poor couple who have nothing. And I know that there are people out there that this isn't their fault. This is because they have trouble finding homes and jobs. You know, it breaks my heart, and their family don't want to help them, or their family turn their back on them. I agree, sometimes the families have to because these people can be toxic. I get that. But sometimes they're not either. Sometimes they are misunderstood. And when I see a couple together, I know that it's unfortunate, you know, and I wish I was earning those, you know, 6 and 7 figures so that I could help these people. I'm not earning much. We're not earning much at the moment. You know, I'm taking care of my mum full time at the moment. You know, my husband's holding up the business at the moment, and we just got told we can't do a specific contract for 3 months. It's on hold because they've run out of money. You know, I look at these greedy people with these huge salaries complaining, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be complaining. It hurts my heart so much. I'm sorry. I just, you know, I know they're there putting their reputations and everything on the line to get their point and to help, you know, but at the end of the day, why does everybody need so much money? Why is there so much greed? Surely there is an answer somewhere. Surely. Anyway, you know, if I'd had an extra, you know, couple of dollars in my purse, I would have stopped and given it to them. I don't have a cent on me. God, I barely got a cent in my account at the moment, thanks to what's going on with our business at the moment. But I feel sorry. I feel sorry for people like that because that could have so easily have been me and my mum and my dad. My dad was homeless for a while. My grandmother, you know, she came over here with nothing, you know, and she worked long hours, took in boarders, male boarders when she had 2 daughters, you know, just to cover her mortgage. You know, she had every room filled with a boarder. She was amazing, you know, but it's scary to think she put her daughters, you know, at risk just to try and put a roof over their heads as well. And these rich people are sitting up there saying, oh, you know, the economy. Come down here, come down and see what it's really like. Go talk to that couple. Anyway, bye.
When people think about homelessness, they often picture something distant, something rare, something that happens somewhere else. But in Australia today, it's becoming something much closer, something more visible. Because when people are living in tents, when families are sleeping in cars, when workers can't afford a place to stay, it's no longer hidden. It's right there. And it forces a difficult question. How does this happen in a country like Australia? A country with resources, with wealth, with opportunity? The answer isn't simple, but part of it is this. Housing has become less about living and more about cost. Prices rise, rents rise, and the people who can't keep up are slowly pushed out. Not all at once, but step by step. First, it becomes harder to save, then harder to rent, then impossible to find somewhere affordable, and eventually there's nowhere left. This is what a system under pressure looks like. It doesn't collapse overnight. It stretches until people start falling through. Australians aren't asking for luxury homes. They're asking for somewhere stable to live, somewhere safe, somewhere affordable, somewhere they can build a life. And when even that becomes out of reach, the consequences are serious, because housing isn't just about shelter. It's about security, dignity, stability. And without it, everything else becomes harder. Work becomes harder. Health becomes harder. Life becomes harder. This is why the housing crisis matters. Because it's not just about prices or markets, it's about people. And when people are being pushed into tents in one of the world's most developed countries, that's not just unfortunate, it's a warning that something fundamental isn't working. And until that's addressed, this won't just be a temporary problem. It will keep growing, because right now, for a rising number of Australians, this isn't just about housing anymore. It's about having a place in the system at all.